The scanner beeped 3 times in quick succession. David Reed frowned at the display screen, showing thermal readings that made no sense. Nothing on Titan 7 should be generating heat. The entire moon was a frozen wasteland of ice and rock, abandoned by every living thing in the galaxy. He tapped the controls, thinking the equipment had malfunctioned. The readings stayed the same. A heat signature, faint but definitely there, coming from beneath an ice shelf 2 kilometers to the west. David guided his small research ship toward the coordinates. His job was simple: map mineral deposits, take core samples, file reports that nobody would read for months. Boring work, but it paid well and kept him away from the crowded inner colonies where people asked too many questions about his past. The ice shelf came into view through the front window. Massive and white, it stretched for dozens of kilometers in every direction. David brought the ship down carefully, landing on a flat section near the heat source. He pulled on his thermal suit and checked the seals twice before stepping into the airlock. The cold hit him like a physical force, even through the insulated suit. His breath fogged inside the helmet as he climbed down the ladder onto the frozen surface. The temperature gauge on his wrist read minus 160 degrees. Cold enough to freeze a human solid in minutes without protection. David walked across the ice, following the readings on his handheld scanner. The signal grew stronger with each step. He reached a ridge where the ice had cracked and buckled, creating a small valley. At the bottom, he saw it, metal, dark and twisted, half buried in the ice. A ship, not human design either. The hull had strange angles and curves that human engineers never used. David slid down the slope, his boots crunching on the frozen surface. The wreckage was old, or at least it looked old. Ice had formed thick layers over the exposed sections. David walked around it, looking for a way inside. On the far side, he found a hole torn in the hull, probably from whatever caused the crash. He climbed through carefully, turning on the light attached to his helmet. The interior was dark and cold. Frost covered every surface, making everything look like it was made of white crystal. David moved deeper into the wreck, following the heat signature. The corridor opened into what looked like a cargo hold. And there, in the center of the room, David stopped breathing for a moment that a creature sat frozen in a massive block of ice. But this was no ordinary creature. It was huge, easily 4 times the size of a human. Wings, or what remained of them, were spread out and trapped in the ice. Scales covered its body, each one the size of David's hand. A long neck curved upward to a head that looked almost like the dragons from old Earth legends. David moved closer. The creature's eyes were closed. Frost covered its snout and claws. For a second, David thought it was dead. Then he saw it, a slight movement, the chest rising and falling, so slowly he almost missed it. The thing was alive. David's mind raced. He had heard stories about the Volturians. Everyone in the colonies had. A species that looked like dragons, kept to themselves, rarely spoke to other races. Proud warriors who considered most other species beneath their notice. Especially humans. He should call this in. Follow proper first contact protocols. Let the diplomats and scientists handle it. That was the smart thing to do. The safe thing. The creature's eyes opened. Just slightly. Just enough for David to see the deep gold color of its iris. It looked at him with an expression that needed no translation. Pain, exhaustion, and something else. The look of someone who had given up hope. That a weak sound came from the creature's throat. A translator device on its chest flickered with dying power, producing broken words in standard galactic speech. Help, please. 3 weeks, so cold. 3 weeks. David looked at the ice encasing the creature. 3 weeks trapped here, slowly freezing to death, waiting for rescue that never came. The creature's eyes closed again, as if even that small effort had drained what little strength remained. David made his decision in that moment. Protocols could go to hell. He wasn't going to stand here and watch another living being die when he could do something about it. He keyed his radio. This is Research Vessel 74 to base station. I've found a crashed alien ship on Titan 7. 1 survivor, critical condition. I'm attempting rescue. The response came back immediately. -74. Maintain distance and wait for proper authority. Do not engage in unauthorized contact. David reached up and switched off his radio. Sometimes doing the right thing meant ignoring the rules. He looked at the frozen Valtorian, at those massive wings trapped in ice, at the slow rise and fall of its chest. "Hang on," David said, even though he knew the creature probably couldn't understand him. "I'm going to get you out of there." He turned and headed back to his ship. He would need cutting tools, thermal equipment, medical supplies if he had any that would work on alien biology. Time was running out, and he had no idea if what he was planning would even work, but he had to try. David loaded the plasma torch into the cargo sled along with thermal blankets, portable heaters, and every medical supply he could find. His hands worked quickly, driven by the memory of those gold eyes looking at him with such desperate hope. The trip back to the wreck took only minutes, but it felt like hours. David kept thinking about what he knew of Valtorians. Not much, really. They came from a world called Valtoria, somewhere in the far spiral arm. A planet of mountains and volcanic activity where the temperature stayed warm year-round. No wonder the creature was dying here. This frozen moon was the exact opposite of everything its body was built for. He dragged the equipment through the hole in the hull and back to the cargo hold. The Valtorian hadn't moved. David set up the portable lights so he could see what he was doing. The ice block was massive, at least 3 meters tall and just as wide. David activated the plasma torch. A thin beam of superheated energy sprang to life, casting blue light across the frozen chamber. He approached the ice carefully and began to cut. The work was slow. Too slow. David had to be precise, keeping the torch moving so he didn't heat any one spot too much. If he cut too close, he might injure the creature. If he cut too far away, he would waste precious time the Valtorian didn't have. Sweat dripped down David's face inside his helmet despite the cold. His arms ached from holding the torch steady. He worked in a pattern, cutting away the ice in careful sections, letting the pieces fall away before moving to the next area. "Stay with me," David said as he worked, even though he knew the creature probably couldn't hear him. "I know you've been alone for 3 weeks. I know you probably thought nobody was coming. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until you're free." Hours passed. David's muscles screamed in protest, but he kept going. He talked while he worked, filling the silence with his voice. He told the Valtorian about Earth, about the oceans and forests. He described warm summer days and tropical beaches, anything he could think of that might be the opposite of this frozen hell. Slowly, the ice gave way. David exposed one of the wings first, careful around the delicate membrane between the supporting bones. The scales underneath were a deep blue color, beautiful, even covered in frost. He moved to the torso next, cutting away the ice that pressed against the creature's chest. The Valtorian's breathing seemed a bit stronger now. Maybe it was David's imagination, or maybe the removal of the ice pressure was helping. Either way, David took it as a good sign and kept working. "You know," David said, cutting around the creature's neck, "I bet you have a family. Someone waiting for you to come home. What are they like? Do Valtorians have families the way humans do?" The translator on the creature's chest flickered. A weak voice emerged, barely audible. "Mate, 2 younglings, they wait," David's hand steadied. "Then we're going to make sure you get back to them. What's your name?" A pause. Then, "Ren, I am David. Nice to meet you, Ren. Sorry about the circumstances." A sound came from Ren that might have been a laugh if he'd had the strength for it. "Humans, always talking, even in crisis, it's what we do best," David said. "Well, that and being stubborn. And right now, I'm being stubborn about keeping you alive." 6 hours after he started, David finally cut through the last section of ice. Ren slumped forward, no longer held upright by the frozen prison. David caught him, or tried to. The Valtorian was far too heavy for a human to support. They both went down in a controlled fall, David cushioning Ren's head as best he could. Ren's body temperature was dangerously low. David could feel it even through his gloves. The dragon's scales felt like touching metal left outside in winter. His wings were damaged, the membranes torn in places where the expanding ice had stressed them beyond their limits. David wrapped thermal blankets around Ren's body and activated the portable heaters, placing them in a circle around the Valtorian. It wasn't enough. The heaters were designed for human use, not for a creature this size. Ren's body temperature was still dropping. David looked at his ship outside. Too small. Ren would never fit through the airlock, and the cargo space wasn't designed for passengers. Moving him would probably kill him at this point anyway. That left only one option. David gathered every thermal blanket he had and spread them over Ren. Then he removed his helmet and outer suit layer, keeping only the thin inner layer. He lay down next to Ren's massive form, pressing his body against the cold scales that Ren's eye opened slightly. "What doing sharing body heat?" David said. "It's not much, but it's something. Humans run pretty warm compared to most species. Maybe it'll help." "You'll freeze." "Not if we keep each other warm," David said. He pulled the thermal blankets over both of them. "Besides, I told you I'm stubborn. I didn't cut you out of that ice just to let you die now." Through the long hours of Titan VII's night, David lay beside the alien dragon, his warmth slowly transferring to Ren's cold body. He talked when Ren seemed to be slipping away, telling stories about anything he could think of. Human history, old movies, bad jokes, anything to keep Ren conscious and fighting. And slowly, so slowly David almost didn't notice at first, Ren's scales began to feel less like ice and more like living flesh. Dawn on Titan VII meant the distant sun rose just enough to turn the black sky to deep purple. David woke stiff and sore, every muscle in his body protesting the night spent on the frozen floor. But he was warm under the blankets, and more importantly, so was Ren. The Valtorian's breathing had strengthened during the night. His scales no longer felt like touching ice. David carefully extracted himself from the nest of thermal blankets and checked Ren's vital signs with his medical scanner. Not perfect, but much better than yesterday. That Ren's eyes opened fully for the first time since David had found him. They were clear now, focused and aware. "You stayed?" "Of course I stayed," David said. He activated a portable heater and held it close to Ren. "How do you feel?" "Like I was frozen for 3 weeks." Ren tried to move his wings and winced. "Damaged. Cannot fly." "The ice expanded and tore the membranes," David said. "But they can heal. You're alive, and that's what matters right now." Ren's gaze fixed on David with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "Why did you do this?" "Your kind and mine are not allies. We have barely spoken in all the years humans have been among the stars. My people have not been kind in our assessment of humanity." David shrugged. "You needed help. I could give it. It's not more complicated than that. For Valtorians, it is always more complicated. We do not trust easily. We do not accept help from strangers." Ren shifted, trying to sit up. David helped support him. "Yet here you are. You risked your life. Ignored your own laws about contact. Why?" "Because letting someone die when you can save them is wrong," David said simply. "That's just basic morality where I come from." Ren made a sound deep in his throat. "My people would call such thinking weakness. They would say the strong survive and the weak perish. That is the natural order." "Yeah, well, humans tend to disagree with natural order on principle," David said. "We're kind of famous for it." For the first time, Ren's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile. "I am beginning to understand why." Over the next 2 days, David worked to restore some of the wrecked ship systems. Ren's strength returned slowly but steadily. They talked as David worked, sharing stories of their worlds and their lives. Ren spoke of Valtoria's great mountains where his clan made their home. David told him about Earth's diversity, the thousands of different cultures and environments packed onto one small planet. On the 3rd day, David finally managed to restore power to the communications array. "There we go," he said, watching the displays light up. "Now we can call for proper rescue. Get you home to your family." Ren had been quiet for several minutes. Now he spoke, his voice heavy. "David, before you activate that signal, there is something you must know." David turned to look at him. "What is it?" "My crash was not an accident. I was shot down." The words hung in the cold air between them. David felt his stomach tighten. "Shot down? By who?" "By my own people." Ren's claws scraped against the metal floor. "I'm not just a pilot. I am an intelligence officer for the Valtorian fleet. 3 months ago, I uncovered evidence of corruption in our military command. Officers selling weapons to hostile species, sabotaging peace negotiations for profit, crimes that go against everything we claim to value. David sat down on a piece of debris, and they try to kill you to keep it quiet. Yes, I was carrying the evidence to the Galactic Council. My ship was sabotaged before I left Valtorian space, set to fail after I jumped to hyperspace. I barely made it here before everything died. Ren looked at his damaged wings. They thought the crash would kill me. When it did not, the cold would finish the job. Where's the evidence now? Ren gestured toward a panel in the wall with one claw. In my ship's data core. Encrypted. Only I can unlock it, and only if I am conscious and willing. If they had recovered my body, frozen and dead, they could have destroyed it without anyone knowing. David walked to the panel and pried it open. Inside was a small cylindrical device, still intact despite the crash. He pulled it free and turned it over in his hands. This little thing? This is what they were willing to commit murder for. That little thing contains evidence that could bring down a dozen high-ranking officers and reshape Valtorian politics for a generation. Ren's voice was grim. And if I know my enemies, they will not simply assume I am dead. They will send someone to confirm it, to make sure the evidence is destroyed. As if summoned by his words, David's scanner started beeping. He pulled it from his belt and looked at the display. His blood went cold. "We have a problem," he said. "A ship just entered the system. Valtorian design, and it's heading straight for Titan 7. Ren struggled to his feet, his damaged wings spreading slightly despite the pain it must have caused. "How long do we have?" David checked the readings. "At their current speed, maybe 20 hours before they reach us. Then we have no time to waste." Ren looked at David with those intense gold eyes. "I will not ask you to risk yourself further. You have already saved my life. But if you help me now, you will make enemies of powerful Valtorians. Your own people may condemn you for interfering in our politics." David looked at the data core in his hand, then at Ren. The dragon who had given up hope until one human showed up. The father who wanted to get home to his family. The officer who was willing to die rather than let corruption stand. 20 hours, David said. "Then let's not waste them. What do we need to do?" David spent the next hours preparing his ship while Ren worked on extracting and securing the data core. The Valtorian moved slowly, his injuries still limiting his mobility, but his movements had purpose now. He was no longer the half-frozen creature waiting to die. He was a warrior preparing for battle. "The ship approaching is a Talon-class cruiser," Ren said, reading data from what remained of his sensors. "Military vessel. Small crew, maybe 10, but heavily armed. Can they track us if we run?" David asked. "Yes. My ship's distress beacon has been broadcasting since I crashed. They know exactly where I am." Ren's claws tightened around the data core. "And they will not leave until they confirm I am dead and this is destroyed." David checked his own ship's capabilities. He had shields, but they were designed to protect against micrometeorites and radiation, not military-grade weapons. His engines were fast for a research vessel, but nothing compared to a warship. In a straight fight, he would last maybe 30 seconds. "We need a plan that doesn't involve fighting," David said. "Agreed, but running is not an option either." Ren looked at David steadily. "Which leaves only one choice. We must make them leave voluntarily. And how do we do that?" Ren's expression shifted into something that showed teeth. "We give them something they fear more than their superiors. We give them exposure." Over the next several hours, they worked together on Ren's plan. David used his ship's communication array to establish a connection to the nearest Galactic Council monitoring station, 3 systems away. Ren prepared a broadcast package, the data core's contents ready to transmit at a moment's notice. "Once we do this, there is no going back," Ren said. "The evidence will be public. My enemies will be exposed. But you'll be caught in the middle of a political firestorm." David thought about the warm bed back on the research station, the quiet life mapping ice and filing reports, the peace he had found in being forgettable and forgotten. Then he thought about Ren's younglings, waiting for their father to come home. "I've been playing it safe for too long anyway," David said. Let's make some noise. The Valtorian cruiser arrived 16 hours later, dropping out of hyperspace with the practiced precision of a military crew. David watched it on his sensors, a sleek and dangerous shape against the stars that a communication request came through immediately. David accepted it. The face that appeared on his screen was another Valtorian, scales a darker shade than Ren's, eyes cold and calculating. Human vessel. This is Commander Skrell of the Valtorian Navy. We are searching for one of our pilots who crashed in this system. Have you detected any wreckage? David kept his expression neutral. This is Research Vessel 7-4. I found a crashed ship on the surface of Titan 7. No survivors. Skrell's eyes narrowed. You are certain? I examined the wreck myself. Whoever was inside didn't make it. Nevertheless, we must confirm this ourselves. Prepare to allow us access to the surface. I'm afraid I can't do that, Commander, David said. Galactic Council regulations state that crash sites involving potential loss of life are to be preserved until proper investigation teams arrive. I've already filed the necessary reports. Skrell's wings shifted in clear agitation. Human, you do not understand what you are interfering with. This is a Valtorian matter. Stand Azita. Can't do that either, David said. Behind him, hidden from the camera's view, Ren moved into position. See, the thing is, I did find something interesting in that wreck. A data core. Encrypted but still intact. I was planning to turn it over to the Council investigators when they arrive. Skrell's expression froze. That data core is Valtorian military property. You have no right to it. Actually, according to Council salvage laws, I have every right to it, David said. Unless, of course, there's a survivor who can claim it. But you just agreed with me that there were no survivors, so give me that data core, human. Skrell's voice had gone deadly quiet. This is not a request. David smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Yeah, I figured you'd say that, which is why I've already uploaded its contents to a Council server. Encrypted, time-locked to release in 6 hours unless I personally cancel it. If anything happens to me or my ship, it goes public automatically. Skrell's claws dug into the armrests of his command chair. You have no idea what you have done. Oh, I think I do, David said. I've read some of the data. Very interesting stuff. Sales records, communication logs, bank transfers. The kind of thing that would be really embarrassing if it became public knowledge. The kind of thing people might kill to keep secret. Ren stepped into view of the camera. Skrell's eyes went wide. Hello, Commander, Ren said calmly. I believe you were told I was dead. Skrell recovered quickly, his expression hardening. Ren, you're under arrest for theft of military property and treason. I think not, Ren said. The evidence is already beyond your reach. You can kill me now, but that changes nothing. In 6 hours, everyone will know what you and your conspirators have done. Unless we destroy you both and claim the human suffered a tragic accident, Skrell said. David leaned back in his chair. See, that's where things get complicated for you, Commander. Because I'm not just some random researcher. I'm a human. And humans have this funny habit of taking it personally when their citizens get murdered. Earth would demand an investigation. A real one. With actual council oversight. Is that really what you want? The silence stretched long. David could see Skrell calculating, weighing his options. Finally, the Valtorian spoke. What do you want? Ren stepped forward, his presence filling the small space of David's ship despite his injuries. What we want is simple, Commander. You will leave this system immediately. You will report to your superiors that I died in the crash, wreckage unrecoverable due to ice conditions. And you will pray that when this evidence goes public, your name is not too deeply involved in the conspiracy. Skrell's scales rippled with barely contained anger. And if I refuse, then the data releases in 6 hours as planned, David said. And I make sure to highlight your presence here in my report to the Council. How you threatened a human civilian. How you tried to prevent a legitimate investigation. That kind of thing tends to make people look really carefully at your activities. I imagine they'll find all sorts of interesting connections. You are bluffing, Skrell said, but his voice lacked conviction. David brought up a secondary screen, showing the upload progress to the Council server. 97% complete. Am I? Skrell stared at the screen for a long moment. Then his eyes shifted to Ren. You would destroy everything we have built, the respect we have earned among the other species, the power of Valtoria in the Council. I would save what we are supposed to be, Ren said quietly. Warriors, yes. Strong, yes. But also honorable. Just. The corruption you serve has rotted that away from the inside. Better to cut out the infection now than let it spread until there is nothing healthy left. Poetic, Skrell said with contempt. But naive. Power is what matters in the galaxy, Ren. Not honor. Not justice. The humans understand this, even if they pretend otherwise. I think you'd be surprised what humans understand, David said. We've seen plenty of empires built on nothing but power. Most of them don't last very long. The ones that endure are the ones built on something stronger. Spare me the philosophy lesson, human. Skrell leaned forward. You have won this encounter. But understand that this is not over. The people I serve have long memories and longer reach. Is that a threat? David asked. It is a fact. Skrell's image flickered as he prepared to cut the connection. Enjoy your victory. Both of you. It may be the last thing you ever enjoy. The screen went dark. Through his sensors, David watched the Valtorian cruiser turn and accelerate away from Titan 7. Within minutes, it had jumped to hyperspace, leaving the frozen moon in silence once more. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That went better than I expected. It went exactly as I feared, Ren said. Skrell will report our deaths, yes, but his masters will know the truth, and they will come for us eventually, once the immediate crisis has passed. Then we make sure the crisis doesn't pass, David said. He opened a new communication channel. Time to stop holding the data hostage and actually release it. Ren placed a claw on David's shoulder, stopping him. Wait. Once you do this, you are committed. There will be no going back to your quiet life. No more hiding on research stations at the edge of space. Are you certain this is what you want? David thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. Ren, 3 days ago, I was bored out of my mind taking ice samples. Now I'm involved in an interstellar conspiracy. I've made enemies of Valtorian military officers, and I've got a dragon as a friend. My life was quiet because I chose to make it that way. But you know what? Quiet is overrated. He pressed the release button. The data began transmitting across the galactic network, spreading to council servers, news agencies, and diplomatic channels. Within hours, every major government would have access to the evidence. There would be no stopping it now. Ren watched the upload progress with an expression David couldn't quite read. You sacrificed your peace for someone you barely know, for a cause that is not your own. Why? Because it became my cause the moment I decided to cut you out of that ice, David said. And because you're not someone I barely know anymore. You're a friend. The words seemed to affect Ren deeply. His wings folded tight against his body, a gesture David had learned meant strong emotion. Voltorians do not make friends easily. We have allies, battle companions, clan members, but friends. He looked at David. That is something else, something rare. Well, get used to it, David said, because we're going to need to stick together through what comes next. Over the next several hours, the galaxy began to react. David's communication panel lit up with incoming messages, some from council investigators requesting his testimony, some from news agencies wanting interviews, a few from Earth Diplomatic Corps asking what the hell he thought he was doing, and one from Ren's family that Ren's claws trembled as he accepted the call. The screen filled with the face of another Valtorian, female, her scales a lighter shade of blue. 2 smaller faces crowded into view, younglings with wide eyes and excited voices. Father, you are alive. The emotion in Ren's voice was almost too much for David to hear. He quietly stepped away, giving Ren privacy for the reunion. Through the thin walls of the ship, he could hear Ren speaking in his own language, words David didn't understand but whose meaning was clear anyway. Love, relief, joy. The sound of the family made whole again. 20 minutes later, Ren ended the call. His eyes were wet, something David hadn't known Voltorians were capable of. They thought I was dead. 3 weeks with no word, no signal. My mate had begun funeral preparations. But now they know the truth, David said. And you'll see them again soon. Yes. Ren straightened, his warrior's composure returning. But first, we must face the council. Give our testimony. See this through to the end. Together, David said. Ren extended his claw. David gripped it in a handshake that bridged two species. Together, Ren agreed. The council chambers on Station Unity were designed to accommodate hundreds of species, from the massive silicon-based granites to the tiny, floating wisps. David had never been in a place so diverse, so filled with beings from across the galaxy. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time that he sat beside Ren in the section reserved for witnesses. Ren's wings were still bandaged, but he held himself with dignity despite his injuries. They had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment, working with council investigators, providing evidence, building an airtight case. The results had been explosive. 12 Valtorian officers arrested, 17 others under investigation. The entire Valtorian military command structure had been forced to undergo emergency reforms. And at the center of it all was the story of a pilot left to die on a frozen moon and the human who refused to let that happen. The chief counselor, a methane-breathing species whose name David couldn't pronounce, called the session to order. We have reviewed the evidence provided by Officer Ren of Valtoria and civilian David Reed of Earth. The case against the accused is substantial and damning. Does anyone wish to speak before we render judgment? Ren stood. I wish to speak, counselor. Proceed. Ren's voice carried across the chamber. 3 months ago, I thought I would die alone in the ice. I had accepted it, made peace with it. I was ready to become just another casualty of corruption and greed. But one human changed that, not because he had anything to gain, not because our species were allies. He saved my life simply because it was the right thing to do. Ren turned to look at David. My people have long prided ourselves on our strength, our honor, our warrior tradition. But we forgot something important. True strength is not about power over others. It is about having the courage to help those in need, even at great cost to yourself. That is a lesson humanity understands. A lesson I learned from David Reed. The chamber was silent. Ren continued. I propose that the council recognize the actions of David Reed with the Star of Valor, the highest civilian honor we can bestow. Furthermore, I propose that Valtoria and Earth enter formal alliance negotiations. Our peoples have much to learn from each other. The chamber erupted in discussion. David sat frozen in shock. An alliance between Earth and Valtoria? The two species had barely spoken before this. It was unprecedented. The chief counselor called for order. This is most unusual, Officer Ren. Such matters require careful consideration and diplomatic process. With respect, Counselor, I have given this careful consideration, Ren said. 3 months of it. And I believe humanity deserves a place at our side. Not as subordinates, not as clients, as equals. Another voice spoke up, this one from the Earth delegation. Ambassador Rodriguez stood. Earth would welcome such discussions, Counselor, though we are as surprised as anyone by this proposal. The vote took 2 hours. When it was done, David had received the Star of Valor by unanimous decision. The alliance proposal passed with strong support, pending formal diplomatic negotiations. Outside the chambers, David was swarmed by reporters and diplomats. Ren's massive form helped shield him from the worst of it. The dragon's presence enough to make most beings keep a respectful distance. How does it feel to be a hero? One reporter shouted. I'm not a hero, David said. I just did what anyone should do. But most wouldn't, another reporter called out. That's what makes it heroic. Ren guided David through the crowd to a quieter section of the station. They stood by a massive window overlooking the galaxy, stars scattered like diamonds on black velvet. Your life will never be quiet again, Ren said. I'm sorry for that. Don't be, David said. Quiet was boring anyway. This is something worth doing. A transport ship approached the station, docking at one of the civilian bays. Ren's entire body tensed with anticipation. They are here. Then go, David said. Your family has waited long enough. Ren hesitated. Come with me. They wish to meet you. David followed Ren to the docking bay. The airlock cycled open, and 3 Volturians emerged. Ren's mate was elegant and strong, her scales gleaming. The 2 younglings were smaller, barely reaching David's chest, but already showing the proud bearing of their species. They rushed to Ren, wrapping wings and arms around him in a tangle of joy and tears. Ren held them close, speaking softly in his own language. Then he turned to David. "This is David Reed," Ren said in the common tongue. "The human who gave me back my life. Who gave me back to you." Ren's mate approached David. She studied him for a long moment, then did something that shocked David to his core. She bowed, a deep gesture of profound respect. "Our family owes you a debt that can never be repaid," she said. "But know that from this day forward, you're a clan to us. Our home is your home. Our strength is your strength." The younglings crowded around David, asking questions faster than he could answer. What was Earth like? Did humans really live on a death world? Was it true he cut their father out of ice with his bare hands? David laughed and did his best to answer. Ren watched with an expression of deep contentment. Later, after the younglings had tired themselves out with questions, Ren and David stood together once more by the window. "You know what the strange thing is?" David said. 3 months ago, I was alone, running from my past, hiding in the ice. Now I've got friends across the galaxy. A purpose. A future. Funny how things change," Ren said. "Yeah." David looked at his reflection in the window. He barely recognized himself anymore. "But in a good way. I found you frozen and hopeless. But I think maybe you saved me too." Ren's wing extended, draping lightly over David's shoulders. A gesture of affection and brotherhood. "Then we are even, my friend." They stood together, human and dragon, looking out at the stars and all the possibilities they held.